Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We're probably looking at closing the store, obviously, because there's nothing to sell.
Concern that job action could push consumers to the illegal pot market and calls on government to do more.
Well, I'm pretty fair-skinned, so it's pretty rough on me, man, but just getting in the water is super important.
Coping and cooling. Heat warnings hit BC, and while short, this may not be the last. Plus, still searching with a wolf on the loose, new calls from animal advocates.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Abbotsford police have identified a suspect in a possible attempted child abduction. Now they're searching for the man, and as David Eby reports, the whole thing has neighbors on edge.
Shock is going through this neighborhood after hearing about the possible child abduction. Police have released this sketch of a man considered a suspect. He's described as dark-skinned, about 40 years old, with a septum piercing in his nose and a flower tattoo on his left arm. He's accused of trying to pull a child from a ground floor bedroom window and along the side of the house and out to the roadway. It's said to have happened at this house on Maple Street. The family says they want privacy and are not ready to talk yet. The child broke free and did not get hurt. Neighbors here say they look out for one another. There is a block watch, a school, and playground. Another reason why some are even more concerned.
I heard like a girl screaming, like a big girl.
1 year and a half living here. No see anything.
A little freaky. We have our kids sleeping in the tent in the backyard on the deck, and that's not happening anymore until this all gets sorted out. So
it was scary to hear about. Generally, this is a pretty safe neighborhood, so you don't hear about that kind of thing ever. We've only been here for a year.
Police say this case is a reminder why doors and windows should always stay locked. Detectives are searching security cameras for footage here in the neighborhood and want to speak to anyone who saw anything suspicious. David Eby, CBC News, Abbotsford.
The Surrey Police Service says one of its officers has been arrested by the Surrey RCMP in relation to a breach of trust investigation. The officer joined the force in May and had a year of prior policing experience, but no other information about the individual has been released.
Anytime there is an allegation against a police officer, regardless of the uniform, regardless of the province in which they work, it's disturbing, it's troubling. At the end of the day, we seek to be a profession that people will ultimately respect.
McDonald says it's unusual for a police force to inform the public of a case like this so early in the process, but he says the Surrey Police Service has done this in the name of transparency as it continues to try to build trust in the community. The individual has been suspended with pay pending the outcome of the investigation. Well, police are now looking into an escape of wolves at the Greater Vancouver Zoo yesterday as a possible crime. As of last night, a lone wolf remains on the loose. And as Yasmin Gandam tells us, animal advocates are using the incident to once again call for zoos to close in BC.
The zoo remains closed, with parts of the fence torn. Langley RCMP confirm officers are investigating it as a break and enter, but admit it's hard to determine how the wolves escaped as there are no surveillance cameras in the area. Nearby farms like Twin Creeks Ranch are concerned about the lone wolf still missing.
These are all domesticated. They don't know how to hunt as a pack. They do not know how to survive in the outback territory. This is not the outback. So it was a death sentence. These people are foolish and criminal.
Wazlowski says he isn't worried about his horses and argues what happened is not the zoo's fault.
They have spent an immense amount of money over those 2 decades in upgrading and improving the experience for these animals.
But animal advocates disagree. The Vancouver Humane Society has been working on a report highlighting numerous incidents over the years. Most recently, the SPCA investigated allegations of animal cruelty put forward by the society. The report found animals lacking space and being kept in poor conditions, with the zoo failing to make improvements.
In the past few years alone, there have been a number of incidents at the Greater Vancouver Zoo A jaguar bit a zoo employee late last year.
The society has been calling for more animal sanctuaries in place of zoos.
What we really would like to see is that the regulations, the province, change the regulations to address things like bringing of new animals into captivity, as well as captive breeding, to move away from keeping these exotic animals in captivity for public entertainment and education.
Other animal rights advocates agree.
Frankly, this wouldn't have happened if we didn't have animals in zoos in the first place. Sentient beings do not belong as entertainers in zoos.
And wolf experts worry about the animal that is still loose.
If you look where the location of the zoo is, 264th Street is very busy. And then just to the north, about a mile, you got the Trans-Canada Highway.
For a second day, the zoo did not respond to requests for comment. Yasmin Gandham, CBC News, Vancouver.
There are growing concerns tonight that job action by members of the BC Government Employees Union members targeting pot shops could force customers to the illegal market. And as Mira Baines reports, legal cannabis stores and industry advocates want the province to be ready with a backup plan.
For private legal pot retailers, BCGEU picket lines at government liquor and cannabis distribution centres couldn't come at a worse time, just as they struggle to capture a share of the lucrative market.
If it lasts probably more than 2 weeks, then yeah, we're probably looking at closing the store, obviously, because there's nothing to sell.
The fledgling legal industry is still grappling with government rules and competition from the underground market. Advocates are calling on the BC government to have a contingency plan for the cannabis industry. The Retail Cannabis Council of BC and the BC Craft Farmers Co-op say in a statement, "We are calling on the BC government to release their essential service plan to make sure cannabis can continue to be legally distributed while labor negotiations continue."
Continuing access to safe legal cannabis should, I believe, be a priority.
A big gripe for private retailers is the single point distribution model. It forces legal pot shops and government-owned stores to get their supply from BC liquor and cannabis centers. Mail order products get their products from the same centers.
So any disruption is going to contribute to that lack of confidence. And I think that, it's very easy for a consumer to say, oh, well, this is no longer convenient. They don't have what I want.
Private retailers want direct access to locally grown cannabis in the same way restaurants can buy directly from local wineries and craft beer makers. Even so, targeted job action is continuing at liquor distribution centers across the province. Workers are calling for wage protections against inflation. But the government says it already has given workers a fair offer with a $2,500 upfront payment.
But the ball right now is in the employer's court. So whether or not we escalate, that will be up to them. If we don't hear from them, then we will look at our next steps.
The BC General Employees Union says it's not up to the BC government or the union to decide what's an essential service. Ultimately, that's defined by the Labor Code and decided on by the Labor Relations Board, leaving the legal cannabis industry stuck in the middle. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver. And picketing side by side with BCGEU members will be 1,200 BC public service professionals. The union says contract negotiations with Public Service Agency have reached an impasse, and it has issued 72-hour strike notice.
We've been at the bargaining table, and our members have made it clear that a wage increase that aligns with a minimum cost of living adjustment is a key priority.
The Professional Employees Association represents government licensed professionals such as engineers, geoscientists, and foresters. Their collective agreement expired at the end of March. In June, 92% of members voted to strike. No details of planned strike action have been released. Well, the East Vancouver Parkade collapse last month has led to the disruption of a major bike lane connecting Vancouver and Burnaby. Cyclists say they've had a hard time getting around it. This is one detour. Bikes are rerouted from the closure on the Central Greenway that merges onto the road shared with vehicles. And this cyclist had to merge with traffic from the Trans-Canada Highway. WorkSafe BC tells CBC the closure remains in effect for safety reasons. They're still addressing the debris and are creating plans for demolition work. But cyclists say it's been a dangerous inconvenience.
This area is squeezed between Lougheed Highway, Grandview Highway, Boundary Road, Rupert Street, which are pretty car-centric and dangerous roads for cyclists.
Kimayu cycles as his primary mode of transportation and questions why routes involving vehicles are dealt with so much quicker than bike lanes. Well, a short-lived heat wave is hitting BC from Vancouver Island all the way to the interior. Communities across the province have activated cooling centers while urging residents to take safety precautions. And as John Hernandez reports, more heat warnings could be on the way as the hotter-than-usual summer drags on.
It might not last for long, but the heat is back. Temperatures across much of Metro Vancouver pushing above 30 degrees as a two-day heat wave bakes much of the province.
You know, overheating is not good for anyone, eh? Get sick and end up in the hospital.
Widespread heat warnings are in effect again, including here in White Rock, where many flock to the water and shade.
I'm pretty fair-skinned, so it's pretty rough on me, man. But just getting in the water is super important. That's why we're at the pier today.
It's really, really important to stay hydrated, you know, and be outside where it's nice and cool in the shade.
Stay in the shade, though. Especially when you got one of these shirts.
Cooling centers have been activated in communities across Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, with health officials urging people to check on the most vulnerable, including seniors and people with disabilities. Messaging not lost on residents like Rose Ramatola.
I have a sister who's got polio. She's a quadriplegic. And yeah, I'm always calling her, making sure she stays cool with the fan, you know, hydrated.
And don't forget about the pets.
I give her a lot of water, and I feed her healthy food like frozen watermelon.
Temperatures are expected to cool across much of BC by Friday. In the interior, where wildfires continue to burn, the heat wave could be followed by thunderstorms.
It's going to be a bit of a tricky weather pattern this week, with the couple of days of heat followed by those unsettled conditions in the interior, which isn't a good combination for the wildfire situation.
Fire officials say both heat waves and storms have contributed to a recent surge in fires, but a slow start to the season means crews are fresh and most fires contained.
We haven't been fatigued and worn out through 3 months of these fires.
A short-lived burst of heat, but summer isn't over, and Environment Canada says more heat warnings could be on the way in the weeks ahead. John Hernandez, CBC News, White Rock.
Let's bring in our meteorologist, Johanna Wagstaffe now. Joe, so hot that we've actually broken some records today.
We have, Anita, a few daily temperature records have fallen, including Comox, Victoria, Pemberton, all in the mid-30s, and Lytton at 35.9 degrees. We'll likely see these kinds of temperatures fall again tomorrow with very similar conditions in place. Let me show you the warnings for British Columbia. Actually, first of all, the current temperatures, where we are, again, hitting the mid to high 30s right now, still at 38 in through Lytton, 25 for YVR. There are the warnings that really match up with those high temperatures, and they're in place for the east side of the Rockies as well, with the center of this high pressure or mini heat dome sitting right over the Rockies. But it's interesting to see what an intense second half of the summer has done for our wildfire season. Such a contrast to last year, where the season started off with such a bang. That first heat dome in June and July, we didn't really see any signs of summer until July. But interestingly, Anita, we've basically hit our average number of 30-degree days across the province in just 6 weeks, rather than getting it over the 2-month or 3-month period. So if it's felt like a hot second half of the summer, you'd be right. I want to just show you, though, that cool down that we heard about with the potential to bring some thunderstorms for Friday. I want to time that out, Anita, because hopefully that'll be some comfortable news for those of on the South Coast. But yeah, definitely a lightning risk for the interior.
All right, a far different second half than we had in the first half of summer, that's for sure.
Totally.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, Canada's tax agency has obtained an order to seize nearly $800,000 from a Chinese billionaire who owns one of Vancouver's most iconic mansions. He bought the Rosemary in 2014 for $11 million. And as Jason Proctor reports, CRA auditors have concluded that his declared income did not match his lifestyle.
Mingfei Zhao made headlines in 2014 after vowing to spruce up the 14,000 square foot home he'd just bought for $11 million.
I liked it because I was watching Downton Abbey.
It was the same year he told the Canada Revenue Agency he earned just over $9,000. Zhao declared income of only $38,000 the next year, amounts that led CRA investigators to conclude his lifestyle didn't match his income.
They're all new, are they?
They dinged him for taxes now worth $770,000, but went to court last month to try to secure that amount against the future sale of the home, because Zhao appears to have moved to Europe. In 2016, Zhao spoke with CBC about his plans for the Rosemary, a mock Tudor mansion he was inspired to purchase by his love for Downton Abbey. He claimed to be a billionaire who wanted to restore the home to its former glory so it could stand for the next 100 years.
In Beijing, old homes were torn down, he says. People regret it now. As new landed immigrants, we should make some contributions to protecting and repairing heritage architecture.
6 years later, the house is for sale, and CRA auditors told a federal court judge Zhao's only real asset in Canada appears to be the Rosemary, meaning his income tax debt would be in jeopardy if the house, listed at $19 million, sells. Zhao did not represent himself at the hearing. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
Beekeepers are buzzing about a new chemical compound developed by SFU. It could fight mites that wipe out honeybee colonies. Parasites known as varroa mites are a deadly worldwide problem among beekeepers. They injure bees and make them vulnerable to all kinds of diseases. SFU researchers are developing this compound, codenamed 3C36, and it's being trialed at a test site in Surrey. Lead researcher Erica Pletner says the results so far are encouraging, though it may take a while for it to be industrialized.
We have seen some very promising activity, both in the lab and in the field. So, but that's where we are. We do have to be realistic. There are still some years of us ahead of us.
Pletner says a chemical like this is very much in demand for beekeepers around the world. She says mites are starting to show signs of resistance to current chemical treatments. More people in British Columbia are speaking something other than English or French as their first language. The latest 2021 census data shows that 31% of British Columbians are native speakers of languages that are neither Indigenous nor official. BC has seen robust growth in those speaking Asian languages, including Punjabi, Cantonese, Mandarin, and Tagalog, as their first language, a trend that Stats Canada says reflects recent waves of immigration from countries like India, China, and the Philippines. And with that, let's look at the bigger picture across the country. The trend is similar. As the CBC's David Thurton reports, Indigenous languages are also seeing a resurgence.
Canada's two official languages are supposed to be on equal footing. But according to Stats Canada, one is in decline.
We see for French a decrease in the proportion of the people who speak, who has French as their first official language spoken.
This graph shows that over the last 2 decades, the number of people who predominantly speak French at home has increased, but Canada's total population has been steadily rising. And when you account for that, the number of French speakers as a proportion of the population has declined from 23% in 1991 to around 19% in 2021. Among Francophones, there's mixed reaction.
No, and don't worry. In 50 years, we will have to create some measures to keep our French.
This researcher isn't panicking.
The decline is not as steep when you take into consideration those people declaring more than one language.
But the federal government says it's taking action.
That's why we're moving forward with an ambitious legislation and also an ambitious action plan for the next 5 years.
Meanwhile, maybe in part to immersion programs like this, Indigenous languages are seeing a resurgence. Stats Canada says.
My hopes for these children are that they go and they practice with each other, with their peers, that they're brave and they're proud of their language.
This restaurant feeds the South Asian diaspora, serving them in their native languages, which, according to Stats Canada, are also seeing significant growth.
before coming over here, I don't know that people will be speaking my language or not.
So we usually prefer English, like we are okay with English, but most of our regular customers are using Gujarati and Hindi.
Stats Canada says what's fueling this linguistic diversity is, of course, immigration. And that's at a cost to French, it says, because most newcomers opt to speak English when they settle here. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
So much more to understand about this data. So UBC professor David Gramling is here now. David is with the Department of Central, Eastern and Northern European Studies. Now, David, Stats Canada says this is all changing because of immigration. What is it about immigration? Are we seeing higher numbers of people coming here? Is it that they're more diverse, or perhaps they feel more comfortable now speaking their native languages than they did decades ago?
Well, it's of course a combination of things. Migration, of course, is growing, and we're seeing a migration population in Vancouver and across Canada that is going to steadily increase. It's going to continue steadily increasing. But one other thing that is happening is, of course, people are feeling more confident in reporting the truth about their own language repertoires and when do they speak which languages and how many first languages do I have? Do I have a mother language and a father language? How does that all play out? So we're just seeing more of a clear picture of something that has been true about Canada for over a century.
Wow, okay. And what role does technology play in the changes that are actually happening in terms of more people speaking their native language?
Migration used to mean, back in the 70s or 80s, leaving behind one's kin and family. Now it doesn't mean that anymore. Over the past 2 years of the pandemic, people have been able to strengthen family relationships and strengthen kinship by a simple Zoom call. And multiple generations of families are able to speak languages with each other that otherwise they would not have had the opportunity to do so with the technologies of past eras.
And we're also seeing a resurgence in Indigenous language. What's fueling this in particular, various Indigenous languages?
Well, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has had several requests of the federal government on how to address Indigenous languages, how to recognize Indigenous languages as official minority languages across the country, and also how to make sure to respect Indigenous linguistic sovereignty and make sure that planning around Indigenous languages are led by Indigenous people. So it's a very complex policy landscape, and it's going to continue to be complex throughout the next several decades.
Yeah, so great to see that in the diversity of languages, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, that we're seeing here. We here in BC and Canada, we have a strong reliance on English, of course, as our main language of communication. But how does this new data affect all of that?
Well, what's becoming clear is that, yes, as people migrate to Canada, they bring their heritage languages with them. The problem, I think, is that people who do not come from a migration background of any sort also need to kind of join the multilingualism of Canada and learn an additional language from among the many languages, Punjabi, Hindi, Kaminam, Cree, that are part of this beautiful multilingual landscape. And so in some ways the future challenge is towards those Canadians who do not speak a language beyond English or French. And so we're looking at a model of 2+ languages for the future in Canada.
And I should mention for you, you grew up speaking 1 language and now you speak 5. So perhaps something for many of us to strive for. UBC professor David Gramling, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Anita.
An extended interview with David Eby, BC's former Attorney General, now running to be our next Premier. Coming up, the CBC presses for his plans to take on the biggest issues facing British Columbians today. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. Well, a play written and set in Ottawa has become a hit at the world-famous Edinburgh Fringe Festival. The play, called Burn, has been playing to sold-out audiences, and Sandra Abma has more.
I can't believe I'm standing in her house.
John Muggleton's suspense thriller Burn is a play about hidden secrets that are painstakingly revealed when a stranger comes to call. The play had its local stage debut at Ottawa's Little Theatre earlier this spring. Now the cast, led by director Venetia Lawless, is winning raves at the influential Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland. With more than 1,000 performances to choose from theater and comedy acts from around the world, the Edinburgh Fringe is a mecca for theater lovers and a place to launch international careers. With all this competition, the Ottawa production of Burn has been selling out nightly to audiences who are spreading the word, like these Scottish fans.
Exciting, great acting. You don't know what's going to happen to the very end. Got to see it. Yeah. Top notch.
This kind of audience reaction makes all the effort worthwhile for the play's director.
I think if I were to sum it up in one word, it's just pride. I am so proud to represent Canada, to represent John's work, and it's validating to show off what I knew about this play, that it's that good.
And for playwright John Muggleton, who is back in Ottawa, the news of his play's success on the world stage is overwhelming.
It's an unbelievable opportunity for a playwright. It's an incredible exposure, but it's also surreal. But this is a different thing. This is where people congregate to watch theater and to check out theater and to scout theater.
Actually, not too many people know this, but it was your dad.
Introduced you to each other.
So your dad told you about that?
No.
Burn wraps up its run at the Edinburgh Fringe on August 20th, and who knows what stage it will land on next. Sandra Abma, CBC News, Ottawa.
Welcome back. The race to replace John Horgan is on. David Eby is one of two people running to lead the provincial NDP. Before stepping back to run, Eby was the Attorney General and Housing Minister, and if he succeeds, he will replace Horgan as Premier. And so, as the City of Vancouver continues to dismantle a homeless encampment on Hastings Street this week, our Stephen Quinn met up with David Eby at Strathcona Park, the site of a former homeless camp.
David Eby, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
You have been the Attorney General of this province since you were first elected back in 2017. And for the last year and a half, you've been the Minister responsible for housing, had that added to your portfolio. Is that something you wanted to take on?
Since working as a lawyer, I've been working on issues related to housing, and housing remains a really significant interest of mine. In opposition, I was the housing critic, and on the downtown east side, I worked on housing issues, and I was really excited to get the housing portfolio. So yes, it was great news.
I won't hold you responsible for everything that's happened for the last 5 years, but it is your government, and this is a government that campaigned on getting people into housing. When you walk down Hastings Street, East Hastings Street right now, and you see all of those tents out there, what do you think of the job your government has done?
Well, I see highlights and I see huge challenges. We've had really a perfect storm of factors. We had record growth in our population in the province last year. We put 100,000 people into the housing market looking for rentals, looking for a place to buy, and a lot of people fell out at the bottom of the housing market. We lost some buildings due to fire, due to flood, and couple that with the stresses of the pandemic that made the mental health and the opioid crisis so much worse. The warnings came for many years about the failure of senior governments to invest in housing, both at the federal and the provincial level, that eventually we would face a reckoning around homelessness and a housing crisis. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And so while we're trying to catch up at the provincial level with housing, BC Housing is probably the biggest developer in Canada and potentially in North America with almost 7,000 units under development. It's not enough. And those buildings that folks are living in down there are not adequate or appropriate housing anymore. And so we need a plan, and the province will do that if I'm successful, to get rid of those SRO buildings, replace them with appropriate housing for folks so that people don't have to live outside. But there will also be rules in some of the buildings, and I think that there has to be a balance between tenant protection and privacy within the buildings, and the rights of someone to do whatever they want, just like in any kind of housing anywhere. Families live in strata where there are rules that restrict exactly what they want to do, but these are the things we do live together.
Did you get the sense that what's happening down there right now, I mean, there's always been that street scene on Hastings Street. We've seen it grown. We've seen it become more dense recently. The tents, though, over the period of time, the couple of weeks we saw all of those tents appear. I haven't seen that before, what looked like a concerted effort. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've never seen that before either, and but I have had the feeling, I think a lot of people have, that the downtown east side has never been in a more difficult or in a more bad situation. I feel like it's been a steady downhill, and this is, this situation right now of the encampments along Hastings is just getting steadily worse. And so the tents were there. I think the people were there and they were ready. Like as soon as there was I assume that there was some sort of decision made about enforcement of either bylaws or police enforcement that resulted in the tents being able to stay for an extended period. And so people were like, okay, we can do this, and because they were previously setting up in other places. And so this crisis has been growing over a period of time, and it's been part of a series of other crises that are both linked and not linked to the pandemic. And so we've been reacting to encampments, reacting to here in Victoria, and the opportunity now is to be proactive, to get ahead of this and to say, what is our strategy for the downtown east side, and for the province to take a leadership role, to bottom line accountability, to say, okay, we're going to coordinate these tables, we're going to make this happen, which functionally is the piece that, in my opinion, is missing and is necessary now.
But I just want to ask you about the numbers released from the coroner again this month. We're talking about now, so far this year, more than 1,000 deaths. They're down slightly from last month. But here we are in year 7 of what was supposed to be a medical emergency, a province-wide medical emergency. We have more than 10,000 people who have now died of poison drugs in this province. What's being done?
Yeah, just horrific numbers. And first, I'll just express my condolences to the family and friends of those who have passed away. I know it has a profound effect on people when they lose someone, regardless of the reason. And when it feels preventable and avoidable, like a drug overdose, that makes it that much harder. I've heard really concerning stories about people who overdose multiple times a day that show up in emergency rooms and are released and back into the community. And instead of being held and supported to survive, and that they're not held until they have serious brain injuries that are caused by their overdoses. And so when I think about what's been missing in the government response, what the opportunity is to be more interventionist with folks who are in that kind of crisis, and in particular on the treatment side of things, so that we can get people a chance to get out of using drugs where they don't know where they came from, don't know what the strength is, and they're at risk of overdose.
David, thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephen.
That's our Stephen Quinn talking to David Eby, one of 2 candidates currently running to replace John Horgan as leader of the NDP and premier until the next election. November 13th is when voting will take place in this leadership race, with the results expected December 3rd. Well, it's the return of a Canadian icon. Zellers is back in business, this time as an online retailer, with the promise of stores opening across the country. We'll tell you when, coming up.
A group of unemployed fruit pickers in British Columbia is finding out the only way to get a meal is to say a prayer, and most of them don't like it. Jerry Thompson has that story.
Early summer rain ruined roughly 25% of the Okanagan cherry crop. The water caused the cherries to split open and rot. So transient farm workers found fewer jobs than is normal for this time of year. 2/3 of them are from Quebec, unemployed, far from home, and many of them destitute. They wait for the next crop, camping under the trees, in city parks, or in abandoned shacks. So they drift into town, find a place like this, punch a hole in the wall, scrape out some insulation to make a bed, sign up at the local welfare office for food vouchers, and then some of them took the food vouchers, converted them to cash, and bought booze. That's how the problem started. Government officials felt that too much food money was being spent on things other than food. So now, instead of giving vouchers or money directly to the transients, the government pays a Baptist missionary, Frank Coop, to feed them.
All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this new day and for your...
The Farm Workers Union is highly critical of this new system because they don't believe anyone should be forced to sit through a religious sermon just because they're broke and hungry. Reverend Coop, however, says the preaching is not mandatory.
I'm first of all a mission, and I'm not ashamed of the gospel. And I told them that this is what I would do, and they said, well, that's all right. If somebody doesn't want to listen, they don't have to. They can stay outside and come in afterwards.
Some of the farm workers like it this way. Mike Vandeper of Montreal even volunteered for kitchen duty.
A lot of people, they're on drugs and booze all the time, and they like better to drink and smoke up than eat, you know. But I found out for myself, food is more important than dope and all, you know, all that crap and all that.
But others still prefer the flexibility of the old voucher system.
Yeah, it's a better way for me because I can get my food, the food I want to eat, and I can have it near my tent, or, you know, can eat when I want to eat. I don't have to walk a 5 mile or...
Either way, times are tough for farm workers. Jerry Thompson, CBC News, in the Okanagan Valley.
The federal government is facing a huge backlog in issuing new passports. In July, it added 4 locations where people can apply and pick them up, including one right here in Richmond. Today, it added 4 more sites around the country. JP Tasker has the story from Ottawa.
The massive lines that once snaked around this Passport Canada office have all but disappeared.
It was not frustrating at all, no, and I was pleasantly surprised. And if I could give, you know, Google reviews, I would probably give 5 stars.
But that doesn't mean all the passport woes are over. To cope with scenes like this, in recent months, the government has been triaging cases. People traveling within days get priority. Others can be left waiting weeks.
Luckily, I was able to get a last-minute cancellation for an August 4th appointment. And then that was that. I was just really lucky to be able to get that. I would have expected probably to wait the whole day had I been able to. So it's been kind of crazy.
We heard some people that said they were here since 4 o'clock in the morning. We showed up at 6:30. Yeah, we showed up 2 hours before, and I mean, I was in an hour and a half.
Applying in person just isn't an option for some Canadians who live outside the major centres. Today, a promise from the minister responsible.
We are expanding passport services to 4 additional Service Canada sites across the country, including here in Trois-Rivières at Quebec, in Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario, in Charlottetown, in Prince Edward Island, and in Red Deer in Alberta.
Gould is promising faster turnaround times, a passport within 10 days if you apply at these new sites. That means more people won't have to rely on the mail to get their passport, which has been unreliable during the pandemic. The minister said more locations are coming soon.
It really undermines the trust in government.
Andrew Griffith is a former top civil servant with Service Canada. He says the government has bungled the travel restart.
The surge was expected. It was in the departmental plan. So clearly there was some problem in terms of maybe they underestimated it, maybe they didn't take it serious enough, maybe they were busy doing other things.
While Ottawa says it's doing everything it can to get more passports into the hands of travelers, the number processed each week hasn't gone up a whole lot. They're only pumping out about 50,000 passports a week, leaving hundreds of thousands of people to wait to find out if they can leave the country. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
2 migrant workers in Quebec who accuse their employer of trying to overcharge them for rent have won their case but lost their jobs. They were fired along with 3 colleagues just weeks after filing their complaints with Quebec's Workplace Health and Safety Board. As the CBC's Verity Stevenson reports, the company claims the workers made comments that hurt its reputation.
The workers from Madagascar gathered in this park near their apartment building to discuss their next steps. We came here to integrate into Quebec society and pursue our dreams, he says. CBC has agreed to protect the former employees' identity because they fear reprisals and that speaking up could jeopardize their immigration status. All 5 had raised concerns about a rent increase their employer, food processing company Plaisir Gastronomique, was trying to impose on them. Plaisir was already taking $225 from their paycheck every 2 weeks and wanted to raise that to $300. As many as 5 people live in these 3-bedroom units. Michel Pilon helped the 2 workers file the complaints. He says the total amount collected means the company would be getting as much as $3,000 a month per unit. Quebec labor law says the most an employer can charge if it's providing accommodation is $53.47 per week, or about $200 a month. A month and a half after Pilon filed the complaints for the 2 workers, they and 3 of their colleagues received a termination letter. The letter said they had made defamatory comments about the company and alleged their claims about being mistreated were simply to obtain permits allowing them to work for someone else. Pilon says it's clear to him the employer wanted to send a message.
C'est un droit, ça, de déposer, bien sûr, des plaintes contre un employeur qui ne se conforme pas à la loi. Et malheureusement, ils en subissent malheureusement les conséquences. Ils ont été congédiés.
Plaisir Gastronomique says it charges that much because of the cost of electricity, internet, furniture, and appliances, and that though it's allowed to charge up to 30% of temporary foreign workers' salary under the federal requirements for the program, it only takes about 17%. The company says it will be fighting the case in court. Verity Stevenson, CBC News, Montreal.
Okay, here's some retail nostalgia that may interest you. An iconic Canadian store is set to make a comeback. As Nisha Patel reports, parent company HBC is hoping to entice bargain hunters with the return of this discount brand.
A decade after closing these doors, HBC wants to revive the Zellers brand at a time when more shoppers are looking for discounts.
I love Zellers. I find their prices were good.
I would love to see it come back. I think it would service a lot of people from different incomes.
I think it's great, to have discount stores, especially for those who, can't afford the higher prices.
The company says it will launch a new website for online shopping and will use the space within some existing Hudson's Bay stores to sell housewares, toys, and clothing under the Zellers label.
Perhaps it's an exercise to bring in consumers into Hudson's Bay stores that may not otherwise go to the stores because they may think that they're too expensive.
The new plan also comes as HBC defends a trademark lawsuit against a Quebec family who started to use the Zellers name.
HBC opened 2 Zellers pop-ups inside Bay stores last year, testing whether consumers would welcome a Zellers comeback.
While the company seems to be banking on nostalgia to entice shoppers, analysts say how the launch is executed is key.
People did have fond memories of the branding, but they didn't necessarily have fond memories of the stores.
20 years ago, Zellers was at its peak with more than 350 locations, but business lagged amid competition with Walmart. HBC sold off its leases to Target and had closed most Zellers stores by 2013.
It's really low risk to them to do this. I just don't see it being a massive business like it used to be.
HBC hasn't said which Bay stores will host the Zellers brand first, just that there will be a presence across Canada, launching early next year. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
In health news now, monkeypox cases have jumped 20% worldwide from last week. That's from the World Health Organization today. The WHO stresses the importance of vaccines, but says they're not a foolproof solution.
The fact that we're beginning to see some breakthrough cases is also really important information because it tells us that the vaccine is not 100% effective in any given circumstance, whether preventive or post-exposure. We cannot expect 100% effectiveness at the moment based on this emerging information.
Lewis says at this point the WHO has no firm data about the effectiveness of the vaccine. Well, much of China is baking under a record-breaking heat wave. Regions of the country have been sweltering in 40-degree temperatures for more than 2 months. China's National Weather Office has issued a red alert for high temperatures. The hot, dry conditions are threatening crops and livestock and have forced industries to shut down. Local authorities have imposed power conservation measures to make sure there's enough electricity to supply homes. So-called cloud seeding operations are being implemented in an effort to encourage rainfall to replenish water supplies. And in Spain, hot, dry weather continues to feed wildfires. In the east, out-of-control flames pushed firefighters off the front lines and forced evacuations. More than 3,000 people have had to flee. The military is helping, and nearly 270,000 hectares have been burned in total this year. That's 4 times Spain's annual average. Now in France, a different type of weather brings chaos. After a summer of drought, torrential rains are soaking parts of the country. Several metro stations in Paris have been flooded, and the equivalent of 1 month's rain fell in just an hour. Authorities are telling people to stay indoors. Well, boats are typically designed to keep water out. We meet an inventive mom who turned that inside out and filled a landlocked boat to the brim. Why she did it is coming up on CBC Vancouver News. And at 6:46, a live look from the Ocean Village Resort in Tofino. With a heat warning gripping large parts of the province, Johanna joins us after the break with the full forecast, including when we can expect the high temperatures to ease.
Songs to play for you too.
Yeah, oh, it's all right. It's exciting way better than I don't hear it.
Yeah,
just read it like free verse. Lately, I feel the haters eating away at my confidence. They scream out my failures and whisper my accomplishments. Yeah, I know how that feels. Last name ever, first name greatest. Like a sprained ankle, boy, I ain't nothing to play with. I like the half rhyme. I like greatest and play with. That's good. Running through the 6 with my woes, counting money, you know how it goes. Pray the real live forever, man. Pray the fakes get exposed. I like that one. I like that one best so far. Good weed, white wine. I come alive in the nighttime. Okay, away we go. Only thing we have on is the radio. I think it's kind of great that he quotes Marilyn Monroe. When she posed in the nude and she was asked if she had nothing on, and she said, I had the radio on. I'm about to say a true thing. I'm about to say a true thing. You was popping back when Usher wore a U-chain. Goddamn, you changed.
Hey, Ani, friends and relatives, and welcome to our new show, I Know Indigenous. The show where we ask Toronto locals to identify something Indigenous. Oh, how about you, ma'am? Oh. Okay, knocking at the door of reconciliation. All right, today our guest is DeFaro Wanatai of the hit comedy series Reservation Dogs. I didn't know we booked you as a guest.
Didn't book me as a guest. Your producers came and grabbed me and made me take a COVID test.
Okay, apologies about that. I'm gonna give you a word, 3 definitions, and then you tell me which one is the correct one.
Yeah, sounds pretty cool. Okay,
Great. First one, a tomahawk. A tomahawk is A, a traditional tool or weapon used by some Indigenous peoples. Is it B, the traditional homeland of the chupacabra? Or C, a late 1990s era wrestler?
D, a steak. My favorite cut.
There is no D. That's not how this show works. Okay, we'll try another one here. Adam Beach is a mixed drink, B, one of the most well-known Indigenous actors ever, or
C, an Indigenous nude beach.
We're gonna move on. Okay, so the next one's gonna be pretty easy. It's a true or false, okay? This young actor was in the film Indian Horse.
I did not see that one. Next question.
All right, join us next time when we're gonna be asking, what is the best treaty? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? 4? Maybe it's 5. 6?
Any of them.
7? Is it 8?
It's probably 8.
Inflation has taken a big bite out of most family budgets, and a lot of people are looking for ways to economize, especially on what can be luxury items. Case in point, a mom in Nova Scotia who set sail for savings when she wanted a backyard pool for her young daughter. Daniel Edwards navigates this story for us.
When you think of a boat, you usually think of it being on the water, but Olivia Kendall put a twist on it. The centerpiece of her backyard is the unusual pool she's recently finished building in the cockpit of an old motorboat.
I had gotten a quote for a stock tank pool, and it was just a little bit out of my budget range, quite a bit out of my budget range, actually.
Though she originally wanted to use a round galvanized steel tank in her backyard, she was discouraged by the high prices. It was only after coming across a chance listing that she started to look at other options.
I started thinking about what other type of container could hold water for a pool. And so I started looking around Facebook Marketplace, and something immediately popped up, and it was this boat listed for $300. And I figured if water can stay out of a boat, maybe it could be trapped in a boat.
The boat is an old Mercury model runabout made by the Chestnut Canoe Company, which was once based in Fredericton. Once she got the boat, the next step was getting it leveled. Then more pool equipment, also from Facebook Marketplace, including a pool pump, sand filter, a saltwater chlorinator, and of course, a place to put cold drinks for herself and her 3-year-old daughter Adele. Kendall says Adele and other kids in the neighborhood are big fans of the project.
And I heard it was going to be a really hot summer, and it was really important to get something going. She goes in it almost every day. If it's not raining, and if we have time, she's in there for sure. I've been able to get in a couple times myself as well.
After about a month of work, Kendall is looking forward to spending more time in the boat with her daughter for the rest of the summer.
Kendall says now that she's done the pool, she's going to spruce up the area a bit. That's going to include painting, lights, and adding some landscaping to the hull of the boat. Daniel Edwards, CBC News, Dartmouth.
Talk about creative ways to cool down. I could use one of those for sure.
I know. Yeah. Sorry, Anita. I'm busy Googling used boats in the area.
Can you look for two?
Yeah, 2 used boats. Yeah, I'll keep you posted. Yeah. What a creative way. I love the creative ways people are coming up with to stay cool. So if you've got any, let us know. There's still another day under the heat warning. Let me show you what we're watching as far as fire danger, because that is also building across the province. Already quickly seeing that orange and red expand in the south in response to the heat. But it's a short-lived heat wave, as we've been saying through the show. This high-pressure ridge is tracking eastward and fast, and so it's opening the door to marine air as early as Friday. Look at that cloud cover and those showers that move in for the end of the week. we're talking a good 5 to 6 degree temperature drop between tomorrow and Friday. And again, tomorrow will feel very similar to today across the province. That will also bring the risk for showers Friday morning across the south coast. It'll be really nice if that materializes, but also the risk for thunderstorms. And you can see anytime I'm showing you this sort of forecast rainfall and the rainfall shows up in sort of small dots like that, that's often a sign that this is convective and we may see thunderstorms. So something to keep an eye on Friday. Take a look at those temperatures, though, soaring through Thursday before coming down. Again, a good 5 degrees for the end of the week, rebounding a couple of degrees for the weekend. Now, I think we'll see some more cloud cover around, so a little more fresh feeling for the weekend, but it's still going to be hot across Western Canada. Long-range forecasts do indicate we still have some hot rounds in us over the next 6 weeks. Tomorrow's forecast, though, you can see a few more clouds for places like Kelowna, another hot one in through Cranbrook, likely breaking daily temperature records across the province, and seeing that high-pressure ridge bring the sunshine to places like Prince Rupert, Dease Lake, all above seasonal. We had some fog this morning in Tofino. That may linger tomorrow morning as well before you get back to the sunshine. So there's the hope for some showers Friday morning. Notice the more comfortable overnight temperatures, but still talking 23, 24 degrees this weekend for YVR. So still mid to high 20s inland. It's a good day to keep using those creative staying cool ideas. And then, Anita, watching next week for the temperatures to build again.
All right. Thanks, Joe. I'll definitely get the kiddie pool out.
Yeah, at least a kiddie pool until we find the boats.
100%. I'm holding you to it.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. Orcas spotted in English Bay to the delight of tourists and longtime Vancouverites. Where they were splashing about is next.
It's pretty amazing. It's like being in a low-flying aircraft. It's really comfortable. Generally, when I'm riding, I feel very good, very free, and that makes me happy.
It's called a duet bike, and they are from the Netherlands. We applied for a grant through the Jewish Foundation of Manitoba and were successful in getting money to purchase the bikes, and they arrived about a month ago, and it's been fabulous for the residents and for the staff that are able to take the residents on rides as well.
Now we might encounter some short girl problems here. So 2 wheels in the front and 1 in the back, so kind of like a reverse tricycle, but allows our residents who don't have the mobility or the balance to ride a standard bike anymore to really be in the driver's seat as someone takes them for a ride.
I have Parkinson's disease, and so unfortunately that means my balance wouldn't allow me doesn't allow me to ride a bike. So I'm very glad to have the opportunity to do that.
Really nice to take them around the lake when they haven't been able to see that, especially with COVID. The amount of movement they've had out of this building has been very limited, so nice to get them out.
People that live in personal care homes, especially the last 2.5 years, it has been incredibly difficult, so any joy that we're able to give them, that's what they deserve.
Riding that bike, you just feel like your leash is off. It's really joyful. I feel free.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
We are ending tonight with a pretty special show on the seawall for some people yesterday. Orcas spotted off Stanley Park and West Vancouver, much to the delight of those lucky enough to see them. Onlookers said they put on quite the show and appeared to be headed in the direction of UBC. Look at that. Okay, is it just me, or has this been the year of whale spottings? That, or people are a lot quicker with their cameras, but I'll take it for sure. I love seeing all of your whale footage. Thanks for sending it in. And thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News. That's it for our show. We will see you tomorrow.